Welcome to Talk Plus Water, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of water with those making waves. This is Todd Butler, your host, and I'm editor-chief also of the Texas Water Journal and Texas Plus Water. You can sign up and get Texas Plus Water and the Texas Water Journal for free by going to texaspluswater.org and texaswaterjournal.org. My guest today is Garry Merritt, the CEO of the Great Springs Project. The Great Springs Project is working to create a greenway of contiguous protected lands between Austin and San Antonio over the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. And we are here tonight in happy hour, or I guess maybe the end of happy hour now, in Doc's backyard in Austin, in South Austin, where we've had a great rehearsal due to some technical issues. And so this is the real Megillah here. This is a real recording. This is the one that counts. So, Garry, welcome and thank you for being part of Talk Plus Water ×2.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me.
So let's start out with your background in water. What's the first thing that kind of got you involved with water issues or interested in water?
For me, it really does start with where I'm from. I'm from a small town in the Western Hill Country called Lakey, a town of about 500 people. It's in the county seat of Real County. We're 100 miles west of San Antonio, 70 miles south of Kerrville, 40 miles north of Uvalde, right on the edge of the Edwards Plateau. And it's where that area is where the headwaters of quite a few Texas rivers are born. The Frio, which is my hometown river, the Nueces River, parts of the Guadalupe, Sabinal, Pedernales, Delano, are all start right up in that area. So water for me has always been really just connected with my life. From swimming in the Frio, the springs that are there near Lakey. Growing up, they were called Youngblood Springs. Now they call them Lakey Springs, but that was just everything that we did was around water in some way.
And so that area out there can be kind of dry, and it's higher in elevation than we here are in Austin. What was that like growing up out there?
It was fantastic. You know, growing up in a town of 500 people. My family's been in Real County for quite a few generations, both on my mom's and dad's side. My mom's from the Lakey area, the Frio Canyon, and my dad's from the Nueces Canyon to the west. And so I was always surrounded by family and people that were just watching me grow up.
So tell us a little bit about your career before we start talking about the Great Springs Project. What's your background like?
I've been incredibly fortunate to have had a pretty fun and diverse career, all of which led me eventually to Great Springs Project. From Lakey, after I graduated high school, I went to Rice University in Houston. Then I went to University of Texas Law School here in Austin. And then I went to Houston to practice law. I wanted to be a real estate and corporate lawyer, and I ended up doing that. Practicing for a small firm there in Houston for a few years, doing pure corporate transactional work, representing entrepreneurs that had ideas and needed money, or funders that were looking for projects, and then real estate work as well, representing real estate developers, people that were doing commercial development, shopping center development, and mortgage finance.
And so what happened after that?
Well, after that, I got a call from someone that said they were helping the Houston Rockets find a team council, an in-house council. And I've always been a sports fan, and especially basketball, and I just couldn't pass up that opportunity. So I went to work in-house with the Houston Rockets in the late 90s, helping do their corporate work, like the radio and television licensing deals and corporate sponsorships, but also ended up helping with salary cap and player contracts with some pretty cool teams from Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, Scottie Pippen. Those teams that came close to winning a championship, but didn't.
So any game you wanted to go to at home, you could go to?
Well, I went to the games, but I had to work. I had somebody that I needed to talk to or some business to do. So and that actually fit my career career and still does that there's not much of a difference between what I do for fun and what I do for work.
So what after the Rockets? What did you do after that?
So after that, I started thinking about really how I wanted to live my life and where I wanted to do it. And after it finally sunk in that what I really wanted to do was to be back in small town. And so I moved back to Leakey. I was fortunate that I had some corporate clients that wanted me to keep doing their work. And so I opened a small law practice there in Leakey. And I was living in a town of 500 people with corporate clients in Atlanta and Chicago and Houston, which was nice. But then I also started doing real estate work. I had some real estate clients that wanted me to help them with title insurance. And so I started a title company with one of my cousins who's a partner and still owns that. I represented banks doing bank finance. So I had a law practice, and then I got involved in county government. Was our elected county attorney for 10 years and then our elected county judge for 7 years.
So you went from a town of about 5 million to a town of about 500 where you'd grown up, and they must have liked you because they made you county judge. And that's a unique position in Texas. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what a county judge is all about?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question because it is a very unique position in government anywhere, and especially in Texas. It's the only, I believe it's the only elected office in Texas where you have all three branches of government within one office. So the title is county judge, and all judges in Texas county judges have judicial authority. Not all of them actually exercise it, like preside over court, but in the Texas Constitution you can. And so I did. So I actually sat as a judge in criminal cases and probate cases, guardianship cases, mental health cases. So that's a part of it. You're a judge, judicial. There's legislative because there's some rulemaking authority of county commissioners' courts, not much, but some. And then administrative because the county judge is basically the CEO of the county, and I got involved in a lot of administrative things through that.
I bet you, I'm just thinking about being a county judge, you probably did all sorts of things. I mean, I just can't imagine all the stuff that came across your desk.
It was really a tremendous opportunity to help to support my local community in a pretty unique way, partly because of my background, but also I just recognize it as an opportunity to do some long-term planning in my county, which hadn't had much done. I was fortunate to end up being elected as the chairperson for our local council of government, so for 9 counties, working regionally there. Our local transit district, which works on rural transportation issues, another 8 counties. So when I was doing this planning, I was thinking about regionality, but I was also thinking about our economic opportunity in Real County, which is the natural resources, the rivers being clean and people want to go there because they love it, the state parks that are close to there, the trees and the rivers. And so one of the things I did is I got involved with Hill Country Alliance, and I ended up sitting on their board. And so when I started to do planning for our county with a group of people, we started to talk about conservation and protection of the natural resources as an economic development tool. We're not going to have and shouldn't have a Toyota factory in Leakey, Texas. That needs to be in San Antonio where it is. But in Real County, my home county, we can sell a lifetime, generations of lifetime of coming to be in those good, clean rivers, sitting under those giant cypress trees and enjoying clean air.
You know, I think a lot of people have a hard time, believing that we have cypress trees that far west, but we do. And I think people generally think of them in Louisiana and on the East Coast where there's a lot more rain, but they go, I wonder, they go any farther west than
Lakey? I don't know of that. There are some on the Nueces, but not much. But that's really is the line. You get any further west, and you start to rise up in some elevation on the Edwards Plateau, and you actually end up in pine country, pinyon pines up there, which is really interesting demarcation.
There's some giant bald cypress on the Frio.
There are.
We did a tree ring study years and years ago and sampled 300 bald cypress trees in central Texas, and then went to the Frio. And I got out of the car, and the tree was it's 20 or 30 feet across at the base. I mean, it was huge. Well, anyway, I'm digressing here. So after being a county judge, you moved back to Austin?
I did. I came here to work for the Texas Association of Counties, a statewide organization, just like its name says, representing all 254 counties in Texas and providing services for all the elected county offices in Texas. So I was the general counsel, and then also they gave me the legislative department as well. So I was legislative director, which is a significant book of business for counties because every 2 years we have legislative session in Texas. And of the almost 6,000 bills that get filed every session, around a third of those will involve local government in some way. So there's a lot of legislative work that happens from the local government side.
So a lot of that, I guess, goes on the local and consent calendar. So you're kind of communicating with your constituents, judges, about what's in these bills, and they're telling you, hey, that's fine. Don't worry about it, let it go on that calendar, and that's kind of the super fast highway to the governor's office.
Yeah, it can be a lot of things on local and consent, and then some pretty significant issues also is Texas over the last few years has worked on how to manage school finance and the school tax burden versus other local government burden, cities and counties, and a couple of legislative sessions. There have been quite a few changes to that, and so helping to navigate those changes and help the county commissioners courts understand how to develop their budgets based on that, and long-term planning based upon tax caps now was really a big part of my job.
So you're in Austin at this point, and you become involved with the Great Springs Project. So tell us how you became involved with it, and tell us what it is. What is the Great Springs Project?
So let me tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you why I said yes to it. Great Springs Project is a nonprofit, a 501c3 that was formed recently with a very specific mission that has an "and" in the middle of it. The mission is to connect a spring-to-spring trail from San Antonio to Austin, connecting San Antonio Springs, the headwaters of the San Antonio River, and we use the Blue Hole on Incarnate Word campus is the southern terminus. So connecting the spring to San Antonio Springs to Comal Springs in the middle of New Braunfels, to San Marcos Springs on campus of Texas State University, to Barton Springs right here in downtown Austin. So that's the first part, a spring-to-spring trail over 100 miles.
Bike trail, hike trail.
That's correct, yeah. Okay. And to do land conservation for the protection and conservation of those springs over the recharge zone of the Edwards Aquifer. And that's the key for us on the land conservation side is it's conservation over the Edwards Aquifer in the middle of the most rapidly developing part of Texas, one of the most rapidly developing areas in the country. So for me, I said yes to Great Springs when they came and asked me to be their first-time CEO because this is a big job.
Right.
It's a big, audacious, bold goal to say we're going to connect a 100-mile trail in the middle of rapid development, and we're going to conserve now 50,000 additional acres in the most rapidly developing area, and we're going to do it within 15 years. So I'm a Texan. I like big Texas-sized projects. I like hard things. And so, and I can't think of anything for me personally, professionally, that's more important than this project.
And I imagine it's got to be done fairly quickly because there's so much development going on, so many people moving to Austin and San Antonio and the corridor in between San Marcos and New Braunfels. It's probably makes your job a lot more difficult to be doing this during this big real estate boom.
Yes, and yes to all the things you said, because we have in the neighborhood of 4.5 million people in this San Antonio to Austin corridor now. By 2050, projected to be double that, so 9 million people. This will be a mega region, and that's not just me saying that or you saying that or the people here in Bach's backyard. The demographers say that. So the communities are growing and will continue to grow at that pace. And so figuring out how to do that, absolutely challenging and hard, but nothing more important, because if we don't do it now, the opportunity will be lost.
Right.
The Texas Hill Country will be lost from this part of the Texas Hill Country. So it's a job to save those places or conserve those places so that people remember why they came here in the first place, both from the land side and to protect the springs.
So the springs and the cities you talked about that will make up that trail, they're along the edge of the escarpment, the Balcones escarpment, and the springs are really a great story in themselves. Why don't you talk a little bit about the importance of those springs?
These communities were built around the springs. And this idea of connecting these 4 springs or connecting these springs in this corridor, we're among the current holders of that vision, but the connection has been there for millennia. For 10, 12, maybe much longer, maybe closer to 20,000 years of human existence at these sites. People have been using these springs and traveling up and down these springs for as long as there were people here. There's something about that we have continued to use the springs to support the things that we're doing as people, as humans. And so as the communities were built, they were built because those springs exist and they could support 100 people, 1,000 people, 100,000 people, and now what they are now. So this idea is important for why we're here, of connecting these springs.
And those springs are, they're cherished by those communities too. And I know from my work over there, and much of what is going on in those communities has been oriented around the springs. For example, the water supply is based on making sure those springs continue to flow. And I imagine that your work has probably resulted in a lot of interest from those communities, and they're probably interested in seeing this happen.
They are, and there have been a lot of great work that has happened for quite a while to help to bring attention to the importance of protecting the Edwards Aquifer, the distinction, the importance of the recharge zone, which is where we work, the relationship of healthy aquifer and spring flows from a water quality and water quantity perspective, from a recreational perspective, from a quality of life perspective. So there are a lot of people that are engaged in this work. And so our job is to help to support that local work and to catalyze new work and bring focus to this particular area of the Edwards. The Edwards Aquifer is huge, you know that.
Right.
And so we work in a very tight band of it, but for a particular reason. Because the recharge features are so important to the health of the aquifer. So we do our land conservation projects there. We talk about it. The trail is over the land over the recharge zone, and so it helps people who would not otherwise maybe understand or plug into the water part of it, get a sense of the place and why the work that we're doing and their support of that work is important for everyone.
So the parts of the recharge zone that you're interested in are only along the trail, or are you interested in parts of the recharge zone that are kind of outside of where your trail is going to be?
It could be outside of that. So we, from the land conservation perspective, we work all through the recharge zone between San Antonio and Austin. So that's our focus there. The trail, we have brought together a steering committee of 22 people up and down the corridor from cities and counties, the river authorities, Lower Colorado River Authority, Robert Blanco River Authority, San Antonio River Authority. We have some nonprofit partners in there like Plum Out Trails Alliance, San Marcos Greenbelt Alliance, San Marcos River Foundation, the Hill Country Conservancy that works with Greenway. In San Antonio, there's a group called Activate SA that's represented. All have been talking about the trails that are being that they're working on and helping us to develop alignments for this connected trail, connecting all those things that they're working on locally, but a connected 100-mile trail. Which means that with those alignments, there are some land conservation projects we'll work on that won't have a trail component because they're outside of the trail alignments. That's okay. And there are trail pieces that we'll work on that don't have a land conservation component, and that's okay too. They exist together, a lot of times supporting each other, but not required.
So I know some of those organizations you mentioned are land trusts. You're working with land trusts, and you're focusing on getting easements or on purchasing property, or
really
something else.
Yeah, really both. So our mission is to once we have identified a property that has high conservation value, is to help bring that property into conservation. Plain and simple that. So we work with all of the land trusts that are working in the watersheds where we are. And if we have a project and a land trust is already working on it, great. We'll fully support them in that. If they want us to work on it, great. And if they want to partner with us, that's great too. We don't have any pride of ownership in any of this. Our job is just to help move it to conservation. So great land trust work being done in this state and especially in this corridor. Those organizations I mentioned, plus the Nature Conservancy, plus Green Spaces Alliance in San Antonio, Robert Blanco River Trust. I mean, there's just some really fantastic work that's being done there. From the policy side, Hill Country Alliance has been fantastic on helping to educate people about the importance in Plum Out County Conservation Alliance, not a land trust, but really works with landowners. So everyone that's doing this work, either actually from a land trust or from an advocacy for land conservation, we work closely with them.
So what about the Texas Department of Transportation and with the real estate community? I imagine that they've got to be key players in what you're trying to do here.
Yeah, both of those really are. From the development community, we work with the developers on their parks and their trails because people want parks and trails, and especially in Central Texas. Every city that's done a survey through their parks department over the last however many years, parks and trails are right up at the top of the list of what people want.
It's so, that is so different than 20 years ago. It seems like a lot of the real estate development kind of looked at, we have to do what do you have to do? Why do we have to do that? But now they see it as an asset. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And you don't have to look further than Zillow to find that out. So if you get on Zillow and you do a search for houses near trails, they sell at a premium.
Right.
And so when people are selling their property, they're marketing it as trail adjacent or within a quarter mile of a trail. So from the development perspective, developer's perspective, having that amenity of not just the trail in their development, but having it connect to something. And so we can help the real estate community as they're doing a project connect their trails to the town, to a school, to a park, with the other work that we're doing to connect. So the real estate community, very, very important. And then TxDOT is as well. They have more and more interest in trails and in alternate transportation. Yeah. They have some directive to put transportation alternatives in. We're talking about like side paths or the trails you'll see in some places where there's a road project with a trail connected with it. TxDOT has done a bike study, a regional bike study from San Antonio to Austin. They did that in just the last few years, and thinking about how to help people move around in different ways necessarily than has been done in the past. So continuing conversation, but a very, very important one.
So is this a project that an organization like the National Park Service would be interested in helping you with, or something like that?
We were incredibly fortunate to receive a technical assistance grant from the National Park Service to help us with this trail planning. That was really the first thing that elevated our work into the consciousness of some of these people and groups. We had been doing our own work to some extent on thinking about trails and things like, but once we started a full trail plan with a steering committee, with the support of the National Park Service, there was some media around that as well, which helped. But people can recognize the value of that the arrowhead, the shield that's connected with the project.
So, how much have you got complete so far, and what have been your biggest challenges in doing this work?
As far as what's complete now, I've talked about people with whom we work, the cities, the counties, all the people that are doing trails, as well as the real estate developers. And as we've looked and brought the people together, and people brought their maps to say where they were working, it's in the neighborhood of a third of this 100-mile trail network is already either on the ground or soon to be on the ground from those local projects. So we have some work to do. Our job at Great Springs Project is to help to fill those gaps and to make those connections with willing landowners. So that's why we're out there talking with landowners about conservation projects, if they're interested in that, on their property, or if they're not interested in that, but they can see the increased value to their property from being connected with a public trail like this, then we'll help in that, whether it's purchasing just a right-of-way for the trail or working some kind of another agreement so that their private development or private property, whatever they choose, would have trail access to it.
So what about challenges? What's the toughest thing in doing all this?
At first blush, you would think that the biggest challenge are the physical constraints. How do you where do you put the trail in?
Right.
And how do you get over a certain road or
that's what I was thinking.
Through a neighborhood, right? 100 miles is a long way, and there's a lot already there. There's a lot of development. So, but when you bring people together and there's so much momentum and appetite for a fully connected trail network between these major cities that tie in the cities along the way, whether it's New Braunfels, Kyle, Buda, and then the cities near San Antonio like Garden Ridge. People want to have their trails be part of this trail network because they recognize the value. And so through that trail planning, those constraints, they're significant, but we're figuring out the good places to do that. Those alignments from that trail planning process will be changing always as certain parts of the trail get built or development comes along or something else happens. So we say that we're going to have a trail plan in final draft forever because we'll always be going back and updating the maps and tweaking that to show the best alignment at that time as we work to get trail on the ground. So the bigger challenge now is what I was talking about before about helping landowners to understand the value that public access brings to their private property. In Texas, less than 5% of our land is publicly accessible land. it's a really low number,
Right.
especially for a state as big as ours. So we don't have, and I'm talking about parks. We have Big Bend National Park and Guadalupe National Park, and we've got National Forest on the eastern side of the county, but you have to drive a long way to get to a federal designated area, a public area. And then we've got a great state park system, but it's really busy.
Right.
And so they're helping landowners to recognize that their property can be more valuable, more interesting, more usable with a public access component of it is a new conversation in a lot of ways here. And I'll just use a quick example for people that are thinking that they want to have a cabin in the mountains somewhere. So for me, it's Colorado. So people say their ideal thing would be to have a cabin on a few acres in the mountains that backs up to a national forest. So they can step out of their backyard and have access to thousands of acres or hundreds of thousands of acres. We don't have that experience in Texas, right? Because we just don't have that kind of public space. But if you could step out of your backyard, or one of your guests at your B&B could step out of their yard, out of their cabin, and get onto a trail that could take them to the next town or for 100 miles, that's pretty compelling.
Well, you're describing my cabin in Montana. It backs up to the national forest. So the pieces of the trail, individual pieces, those trails will be functioning trails that people will be using, even while you're trying to fill in the connections and all that.
Right.
Where are the biggest gaps? The gaps along the whole length of the trail, or there's some areas where there are more gaps that you're working to fill in than others?
Well, there are really great trail networks in the cities up and down this corridor. So you're familiar, Austin has got its great trail system here from the trail around the lake to the Violet Crown Trail that goes south from Barton Springs into Hayes County. In San Marcos, it's incredible. There's a really great trail network there along Purgatory Creek, and then expanding around the city of San Marcos. New Braunfels has got some really good trails there and great opportunity to build trails out of the city toward San Marcos along Alligator Creek and south out of the city along what's called the Dry Comal Creek. And then in San Antonio, there's an amazing trail system, the Howard Peak Greenway system, mainly built on greenways, as the name would make you think, but some on-street connections also. And so those trail networks get bigger and bigger, the gaps get smaller and smaller. So the gaps that are among the most challenging are between San Marcos and Austin, and San Marcos and New Braunfels. There's a lot of development there as well already, and those places are filling in pretty quickly. But there's trail opportunity there, and it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country.
So what's been the response from the landowners? I've talked a little bit about my involvement with land trusts before we started taping here, and I'm curious. Are the landowners generally receptive and see this as an advantage for them? And I'm going to ask you two questions. The other is, I think about your background with local governments and as a county judge, and seems to me like this is a great thing for small cities, small towns along this trail who think about, okay, well, all these folks in San Antonio and Austin are going to come out here and use our trails and spend money on the weekends, and then when the weekend's over, they go home.
Yeah, so I'll take the first one first, which is the conservation easement question. People's understanding about the way that a conservation easement can be another great tool in a toolbox for a landowner has really advanced in the last couple of decades, less than that, maybe in the last decade. Being from Lakey, which is a really very rural community with there are ranchers out there and people that have hunting properties. not that long ago, you didn't talk about conservation easements in mixed company. That was just, no one wanted the government to come on their property. Right. That was all in quotes. Over time, through great work of helping landowners to understand what a conservation easement is and what it isn't, people have recognized more and more that depending on what they want to do with their property, then this is one opportunity to achieve their goals. They may have other goals, and so there are other opportunities for that. But if their goal is to keep a place intact or to preserve the family legacy part of a piece of property and still have some development, or to divide it among family members but still keep the family connection with it, a conservation easement is a great tool for all of those things. So that's been incredibly helpful, is to continue those conversations that have been going on at a really high level, a very respectful toward a landowner level over the last many years. The other is that because of all the development that is occurring, the landowners are very sophisticated about their property, the value of their property, and what their options are for the property. We don't knock on a single door where the landowner says, "Oh, I never thought about what would happen if somebody knocked on my door wanting to buy my property." They have a stack of letters that they've been getting for the last 10 years of people cold-calling them to buy their property. So they've been thinking about it. And then the other is that this is this trail and trails like this, trails in general, are just incredible economic opportunities for communities, whether it's in the form of non-river-based tourism. So for those communities that are really tourism-based, like New Braunfels, for example, here's an opportunity to have a tourism-related infrastructure. You've got something that you can bring to your community that's there year-round.
And even during a drought.
Even during the drought.
Because we have a lot of droughts.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we had a Great Springs project when we were working on the trail plan with the trail plan committee. One of the first things we did was to commission an economic impact analysis to see what would it mean to these local communities to have this 100-mile trail, and with really conservative numbers, just looking at increased sales tax revenue, some transportation savings, and some health savings, it's over $56 million a year. That's not counting the value of water in place. That's not taking into consideration increased land values, or increased property taxes, or those. There's a whole other set of ways to talk about it, but just the pure immediate economic impact. Pretty significant number.
Yeah, preserving the recharge zone is protecting our water supply, especially for the Edwards Arm.
That's right.
So, who's helping you out with this work? You've got a staff and a board. Tell us a little bit about the folks who are helping.
We're incredibly fortunate. We've got a great dynamic board and a great staff and team. At the board level, our board chairperson is Deborah Morin. It was her vision of using land transactions to help to protect water many years ago. And then in the last few years, she actually got actively involved in that work, particularly around San Marcos, helping the San Marcos River Foundation to acquire conservation easements or property that ended up being owned by the city of San Marcos. And from that, she helped to stand up Great Springs Project as an independent, not 501c3, to do the work for the entire region. This is her vision, and then shared by a really dynamic board. Hope Andrade is also on our board. She's a former Texas Secretary of State. She was also on the Texas Transportation Commission that administers TxDOT, Texas Workforce Commission. So she really understands the levers of state government and large-scale projects. Kendall Bennett does real estate development work in the region from San Antonio to Austin and down into the valley. He's also on the board of Colorado River Alliance and also has that regional vision for the use of the natural resources and a growing economy. And Diane Wassenich, who is the first-time and long-time executive director of the San Marcos River Foundation. She's a conservation hero and has done just amazing work on helping to protect San Marcos Springs, Spring Lake in that area.
I've known Diane for a long time. Yeah.
Amazing. And then we also have on our board April Ancira from the Ancira car dealership family. She's been heavily involved in legislative work on the transportation side, and also has a big vision for the power of this region, tying it together economically and using the resources. On our staff side, we're incredibly fortunate. We've got land transactions, people like Scott Parker, who was with Trust for Public Lands for many years. Emma Lindros Siegel is doing development work with us as our Chief Development Officer. She was at Barton Springs Conservancy. Lita Quaresma-Lanfi, who's got a long career in doing this kind of conservation work from the organizational side. And then trail planners and development people and staff. I have a staff of 10, and they're all just top-notch, really mission-focused, and they bring it every day.
And so I imagine that you're working with the cities along this route, and they're actively engaged in it in the counties and helping you out?
That's right. It's the cities, it's the counties, it's the river authorities, real estate developers, other nonprofits. Sometimes the city or county wants to add to their public park inventory, so they need more public parks. Sometimes it's watershed protection. Sometimes it's habitat conservation. The variety of ways that sometimes it's flood mitigation. That's something that we've been talking a lot about is protecting recharge features, is water quality and water quantity protection, but also flood mitigation. And so you see there's more interest in that in cities and counties. They have an emergency management plan and some of those are calling for green infrastructure strategies for flood mitigation. We're in Flood Alley here and with these rivers. And so there's a lot of boxes that get checked from this kind of work from the cities and the county side, from those other people that I mentioned as well.
So how much is this going to cost ultimately? What do you think the price tag is going to be?
Well, we've been talking about real estate, and you, certainly in the last few years, we're in the trend has been up on real estate prices. Real estate is cyclical, but we don't blush anymore when we hear someone talking about a property selling for $20,000 or $30,000 an acre in our corridor. We can do some math here. I think we were earlier talking about public math, but 50,000 acres, those kind of values, even if just a conservation easement, we might be talking about up to half of the fair market value would be the value of a conservation easement. So we've got that. On the trail side, 100-mile trail, depending on the type of trail surface, if it's a fully improved trail, and some of this will be, those trail costs can be $1 million a mile with planning, engineering, design, construction.
And somebody's going to maintain it too.
And then maintenance. That's exactly right. Having maintenance provided for. If it's a soft surface trail, there can be it can be less than that, and some of this will be soft surface trail, but it's the numbers add up.
What does that mean? Soft surface? Does that mean like just rocks?
Yeah, it can mean everything from a crushed granite, like you would see at on the Butler Trail and parts of the Violet Crown Trail, to really just maintain a dirt surface, which it can be in some places. It really depends on the location, the topography, the maintenance is important. You want to make sure that you build a trail where the maintenance, the costs are in line with the topography and where the trail is located.
So you mentioned that the Great Streams Project is a 501c3. Have you had much success in raising the money that you need?
This is a project that really has brought people together doing the work that they were already doing, but to scale. And so with that, we have been fortunate to have quite a bit of support. We think about the operational work that we do, like keep paying salaries and keeping the lights on to be engaged in the work. And then we think about capital projects, how we put land in conservation, pay for conservation easements, or help to pay for trail right away or trail construction. On the operational side, we have some individual donors that are very, very generous and supportive of the organization, and then great foundational support also. On the capital project side, really looking at kind of 3 buckets of money. There's public funds. You see more public money being used for these projects because, as we talked about, they're important to the people in those communities. So it could be something like in Hayes County, last year there was a Parks and Open Space bond for $75 million that the voters approved. And we have identified some projects that could be funded through that bond that are important to the cities along the way, and that can also be part of the trail. San Antonio, being an example, Bexar County has put money in their budget for the continuation of the trail system there. The city of San Antonio is going to have a bond election this May, so their public side is significant. Same thing in Austin, Travis County, Buda. People do bonds for these things. On the philanthropic side, this is a Texas-sized project, and it's something that really attracts attention of people because it's so important to us, to the state, and to the people that live here to have these places to be outside with their family and with their friends for the health benefits, the mental health benefits, and quality of life. There are people that want to philanthropically support that work, so that's another bucket. And then the third bucket is from people that want to invest in these projects, whether they're going to be the ultimate owners of property, and so we will help them to buy property with the understanding that we'll find money for a conservation easement for it, with hopefully a trail component. Or it might be a group that wants to get together and buy property and put a conservation easement on it, and then hold it for a few years, and then sell it and be resellers. All of those things we say yes to all of that, and we help to structure the deal according to the piece of property and what the funding opportunities are for that property.
Okay, so I've got the tires aired up on my bike. When am I going to be able to take that trail from Austin to San Antonio? What's your goal?
The full 100 miles by 2036.
So tell us, well, I know the answer, but tell everybody else, what is the significance of 2036?
That is the 200th anniversary of Texas becoming an independent republic, later to become a state. And this trail, this work that we do, is from the Alamo to the Capitol by 2036.
And so let's get to our last question here, which is, how can our listeners find out more about the Great Springs Project, and what can they do to help you succeed?
It's a great question, and one I very much appreciate. The first thing people can do is go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. We send out a quarterly newsletter talking about the work that we're doing, but also work that our project partners are doing up and down the corridor. Our website is greatspringsproject.org. Springs is plural because we're talking about four springs here. Greatspringsproject.org. You can also follow us on social media. You can just search for Great Springs Project. We do a thing called #Trail Tuesday, where we post trail pictures. A lot of those are along the I-35 corridor, but we have some things in there, trails in different places, but to help bring attention to trails and how important those are. So that's an important piece. And then the other is that if someone has a particular interest in volunteering in a particular way, or they know of a piece of property, or they have some other expertise, they can reach out to us on the website. There's a way to do that. They can send us a note. I'll read those. We read those every day and respond to every single one of them. And so that's a really easy way to be in touch with us.
So #trail or trails? Plural. Trails. #Trails Tuesday.
That's right.
And the GreatSpringsProject.org.
That's it.
Garry, I really enjoyed talking to you about what you're doing and learning about this project. I'd heard, quite a few things about it, but I didn't really know all the details. And when I was doing my research before we got together to record this, I was just really impressed with the whole idea. And I wish you every success in seeing it fulfilled.
Well, yeah, thanks for that, Todd. And the work that we're doing right now, we're just continuing the great work that others, including you, have been doing for a long time. These aren't new ideas and new efforts, and we couldn't do any of this without all the things that have happened before we got here and started helping in this way. And it takes all of us, and it takes the work that's been done, it's the work we're doing now, the work we're going to do, and everybody to do it. So thank you for the chance to talk with you about it.
Well, maybe you can kind of straighten out some of the things I messed up along the way. That'd be an extra benefit of the project. So, Gary, thank you for joining us today. I really enjoyed this.
So did I, Todd.
This has been Talk Plus Water, and my guest was Garry Merritt, who's the CEO of the Great Springs Project, which is working to create a greenway of contiguous protected lands between Austin and San Antonio over the Evans Aquifer recharge zone. We've been talking to you tonight from Doc's backyard here in South Austin, happy hour. And so we thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And if you enjoyed it, please consider sharing it with your friends or giving it a like. Either one would be nice. My name's Todd Butler. Let's talk water again soon.